So welcome to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation Community Lens Podcast. Today's edition is going to focus on care leavers. Part of the reason for that is because the Community Foundation has been managing some funding that's specifically targeted towards care leavers from our region. And I would like to ask Kirsty Robertson from Motivate to introduce herself as my first guest.
Hi, Jacqui. Firstly, thank you for inviting me on. It's really exciting to be here. So my name is Kirsty Robertson. I'm the CEO of Motivate. So Motivate is an organisation based in Hampshire that works very closely with care leavers.
Thanks, Kirsty. Welcome. And Liz, Hubbuck.
Hello, good afternoon. It is the afternoon, isn't it? It is the
It
afternoon.
is.
Hi. Like Kirsty, thank you so much for inviting us here today. Really looking forward to these conversations. So my name is Liz Hubbuck. I am the Youth Engagement Manager at the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So I look after essentially two groups of young people, aged 14 to 25, that kind of want their say around social justice, criminal justice, and really give them the opportunity to sit around the table where policies discussed and changed and try and make sure that their voices are heard. So I'm here also in the shoes of a care leaver myself. So I went through the care system when I was younger. So I've kind of bringing the lived experience as well as kind of my professional experience of supporting a variety of young people.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Kirsty. So I couldn't have two more qualified people with me in the room today. So when I was thinking about today's episode, I was thinking about a presentation I heard some years ago, which started off with 4 words. And those 4 words were, childhood lasts a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And I really took that into my heart. You know, we take the emotional and social lessons that we've learned as children with us into adulthood. Mm. We learn how to interact with each other. We learn how to be part of a group. And we learn our sense of self and self-worth as children. And that, you know, that's what we take into our adult lives. So I guess part of what we want to talk about today is what happens if that child doesn't come from a secure and loving family background. What are the implications for that as they grow up and move into adulthood? And I think that you both have lots of experience in being able to respond to that. So, Liz, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind, because you have that. You're here with both of those kind of experiences, both professional and personal. So, can you just introduce to us a little bit about particularly your personal experience, if you're happy to?
Yeah, of course. I went into the foster care system when I was 14, just about turning 15. But previously to that, I'd lived with a single parent family where there was lots of mental health issues and substance use. And as it is for lots of children that go into the care system, they're normally taken in by the local authority because there's maybe something lacking and they're not getting that kind of stable, safe care that should and you'd expect a child to have. So even though I went into foster care as a teenager, I'd already experienced a lot of adversity in those younger years. But yeah, I went into care when I was 14, nearly 15. Stayed there for a couple of years and then left pretty much as once I was 16, just about 17. So I have that experience of leaving that any kind of stability from a very young age and then navigating that life as a care leaver through college. And I was lucky, I guess fortunate enough, I don't know how, but managed to get myself through uni. But being in the care system and then leaving that and thinking when you're younger, this is great. Okay, I'll have my independence now. I can go off into the world on my own. You don't have the experience to know this is actually really, really hard. And navigating life, like you said, with all the other kind of adverse experiences that have happened as a child, having that in your suitcase, as well as 5 bin liners that you normally get when you kind of move around the care system, that's not any kind of great toolkit to have. You don't have the things that your peers may have, but you're still trying to navigate a way to life to be able to make the right decisions and the right choices for yourself without that guidance. So I'm a huge advocate for young people kind of leaving care, because you think you know a lot. I think when you're younger, we all do, don't we?
Teenagers
We all know
do.
everything
Absolutely.
as a teenager. And actually, you as a care leaver lack anyone else really to go back to maybe question or challenge your views, or kind of navigating that yourself. And it's really, really hard. So the things that we'll go on to talk about today, I've been there and I've kind of lived through it, and I've been fortunate in some ways. I occasionally made the right choice. I made lots of choices that weren't the right choices, but I have managed to get through it. But it doesn't leave you, and even as an adult, having been a care leaver, it never leaves you. The things that you're lacking, you're still lacking. You just kind of find ways to kind of fulfill those gaps. But for so many care leavers, they're not great outcomes. Having said that, I think it's really important to speak and champion people that have been through the care system too. And I just think we don't hear enough of that, which is why there's that stigma around it that you feel as a care leaver, because the narrative that's out there is negative. And I think it's really important also to celebrate that superpower that is being a care leaver as well.
Absolutely.
To show people that,
the survival and
absolutely,
and the ability to thrive
of
despite
course,
it all.
Yeah.
Liz, can I ask you just to go back, and actually, Kirsty, you might want to come into this as well, going back to being, as we would have in the past, I think always said, being taken into care. My sense is that there's quite a misunderstanding of what that is, because it's not an easy thing to happen, is it? It doesn't, you know, things have to be pretty ropey for a child or a family to have that kind of intervention. Could maybe both of you say a little bit more about that process and what happens for a family to be kind of broke? Is that the right word, broken up in that way? But for that step to be taken, to be taken.
I'm going to let Kirsty speak because I've spoken a lot, unless you want to come to me. But
yeah, I agree. And I think so. Motivate facilitate the Hampshire Care Councils. So this is a group of care leavers across Hampshire that come together and try and affect change in Hampshire County Council for all care leavers. And actually, they're really passionate about making change for children in care. So children who are currently in care, they're really passionate about trying to make that change for them. I think it's a real mixed bag, I think, across all of our care leavers on how that came about. But for quite a few of them, they would have lived in quite chaotic households before that decision was made, and they would have had to attend meetings, at school, meetings at home, and they remember all those.
And they must feel quite noticeable in that situation, right? That you're being taken out of your classroom to go and have a special meeting. That must feel quite isolating.
Absolutely. And I think for the care councils, one of their main priorities is reducing stigma, and that's reducing stigma in schools and across the county for who care leavers are. And I think that's really, really important to them, is that reducing stigma. They've done lots and lots of work around that, but for every single care leaver on the council, whatever their story is on when they went into care, they all faced stigma. And that's what they really want to try and remove for care leavers.
Yeah. I remember a very dear friend of mine saying some years ago, and she was in a really horrific family situation, and the approach at the time was keep the family together, whatever, like that was the most important thing at the time. And she said to me, I wish I had been taken into a care, because then what was happening to me would have stopped on that day.
Yeah.
And I think I always reflect on that, because I think, I mean, I do know the detail of what was happening, and it was pretty horrific. And actually that's that, you know, that kind of story, that's the thread. There's lots, you know, often, you know, drug taking or substance misuse, abuse, neglect, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
I think the thing is that's difficult though is that as a child you don't know what is or isn't normal. So whatever background or family that you live in, it's normal to you, isn't it? And most of the time the bond and the love that you have with a parent, even if you're being harmed in some way, is huge. So the thought as a kid of being taken away from your mum or your dad or your loved ones is horrendous, because you want to be there. I think sometimes in hindsight, maybe as a young adult, it's easier to look back, see what risk was there, and think, I could and
have
I
stopped.
should.
Yeah.
I should have been taken away beforehand. But at the time, you don't want that. You want to.
You want to be loved and nurtured,
no
right?
matter
Isn't that what
you're-
every kid wants?
And no matter, there's no food in the fridge, or there's, stuff everywhere, and you living in that chaotic lifestyle, it's still your home and it's still what you're used to. So when you are going to and from all those meetings and there's discussion, because also there's the stigma as well that children's services are going to take you away from your family, and that isn't the case. They do there's lots that goes on before that happens. That is a last resort. And it's incredibly difficult to get that order. It's not easy. So it has to be extremely serious. But as a child in that situation, I don't want to be taken away. I'm happy here.
Yeah.
Because you don't know any different. Because I can look back now and think, oh, I should have been probably removed from my family situation way before I was. And maybe my life would have been different. Also, I don't regret anything in my life, but it's there is that stigma. As soon as children's services are involved, you're different, and there might be someone else going through things similar that don't have children's services involved. So you are, as Kirsty was saying, very isolated in that situation, because also as an adult now, we like this podcast, we're talking about it. As a child, you don't know what else is going on in your school, what else is going on with your friends, so you feel very alone in those situations.
And you may never have been to another kid's house, right?
Absolutely.
So you don't necessarily know what the other pictures look like.
And I think it's very lonely in that situation, which again, part of breaking that stigma is to have these uncomfortable conversations, and for, in educational settings, for instance, for people to talk about it more. I mean, it grates me now so much when you still hear schools, and I'm the first one at my kids' school to be like, you need to say this, but they just still say parents or mum and dad. I'm like, the family unit doesn't look like that at all. And this is even before someone is maybe taken into the care of the local authority. But even on national radio stations, and then on some BBC radio shows, they sometimes say, get your mum or dad to do that. And so many people don't have that family unit. And I just think it's a cultural shift that needs to change, isn't it, to break the stigma of someone that is either a child looked after or someone in care. And to celebrate the strengths again that these young people have, because they're so not misunderstood, but it's just not recognised, the difficulty and what strength comes from having lived through that experience.
Yeah, I agree.
For listeners, a care leaver is determined to be between 18 and 25, but they transition out of care 16 to 18, right?
So it's kind of from the age of 16.
And if you think about the 16 to 25-year-olds that there is so much change going on in their lives. They're likely to have changed school to some form of college, so they might have lost all of the friends. If they had, made friends in their previous school, they may be looking at work. They may be becoming independent in accommodation, setting up a bank account, all of those things. And if you're kind of starting that period of your life without a fallback position that you can guarantee, and also because, I mean, my children would be so horrified with me saying this, but you're not a fully formed adult, right? You're still learning stuff. I mean, I'm still learning stuff, and I'm a bit older than that.
When do we become fully formed adults?
Is it 25? I think
supposedly.
But I remember when I was 25, I think I had a moment where the penny dropped when I realised I wasn't actually somebody who knew everything, and I probably never would be. But up until that time, you kind of have those ideas. And without that kind of constant support around you, or the consistency, I think, of the support, that's why we have organisations like Motivate to kind of provide that backup.
Yeah, and I think for care leavers on the council, that's been a big part of what they would like to change, having that consistent person to go to. I think there's some stories around, care leavers over a period of 3 years having 8 different personal advisors supporting them and not enough time to really work with them on all their needs. And that's what they would really like to change, having that consistent person and someone who's got the time to spend with them on all those needs.
Because part of the need that you have as a young person is just kind of having a mate, that person that you can, is this how I do a bank account? I think I've got it right, but
Yeah, and I know for my own children, they would always have me to go to for whatever questions. And I think for care leavers, it might be that they do have a PA and they try and contact their PA who will get back to them.
Who's got a caseload?
Who's got a huge caseload of care leavers. So it's not that instant, consistent person that they can just go, I don't know how to do this. And I think that's really come alive, I think, through the work of the care councils. And for them, having those social connections with each other has also been really, really important. So to spend time with care leavers, not on a course, not doing cooking, all that is important, but actually just to go and have a game of bowling together, go to flip out together or go for a walk together. It's been really, really important for them to spend time with care leavers with that lived experience as well.
Yeah. One of the things, we did a workshop together and some of the young people that Motivate have been working with through the Care Leavers Council came along. And one of the things that I was reflecting on after that was that those young people are first and foremost young people, right? And young people come with all of their stuff, whatever that stuff might be, because they're people. We as adults have all of our stuff. And then you add that layer of that they don't necessarily have that fallback of the kind of traditional family home or whatever, which isn't, necessarily the perfect thing. But can you just talk a little bit more about some of those young people and the sorts of, without revealing any personal details, of course, but the sorts of things that they've brought to Motivate as the sort of issues that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Motivate have been facilitating the Care Council since 2023. So, and it was brand new for Hampshire in relation to there was no council over the COVID period, and it was for Motivate to kind of really grow that. I think right at the beginning, there was a real mistrust with young people as we were trying to get care leavers involved in the council, that why would they? What change is going to be made? And that was a whole lot of work, I think, at the beginning to really put that trust in young people that we wanted to make that change in Hampshire. I think for completely lost train of thought.
Well, actually, whilst you're thinking, then what I'm going to get you to do, Kirsty, is a little plump for the importance of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Fund funding that you've had.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was
tiny
going.
prompt.
That's exactly where I was going. I think we found as we started working more with care leavers around the council and attending meetings and actually their priorities and all the work they want to do, what we found is for the care leavers, the amount of needs that came with them that actually they needed lots and lots of support with. So I think for the first time, we had a care leaver contact us who'd just been made homeless and had absolutely no idea what to do. And that was really, really tough time. And I think during that time, that young person wasn't able to engage in any council activities or events or the priorities because actually they had more needs than that. And I think the funding from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation has been really important to make sure that we can give that one-to-one support, that youth mentoring when needed, so that young people can continue to engage with the council, which is really, really important. I don't think even Motivate as an organisation realised how many issues and needs those care leavers would have to be able to, that needed to be broken down, I think, for them to engage properly in the council activities.
Yeah.
I just want to add on to that really, because in our youth commission now, we do have some young people kind of in the process of leaving care or a care leaver that are part of the care council. But it's just, and my experience of kind of working with other people that are going through that kind of leaving care, being able to be part of things like the Care Council, things like the Youth Commission, where they have consistent members of staff, even if it's not the people that are working one-to-one all the time, but there's somebody there, such as Kirsty, that they see on a regular basis, that they know are caring about them. Being part of that group is so important. That sense of self-worth, that sense of identity, and doing something positive is huge for young people. And I speak from myself as well, getting involved in certain things when I was younger, because you don't have that consistent anything else. You will be moving between different homes, different addresses, different colleges, different friendship groups. Having people that you see on a regular basis, that you're in contact with, that understand you and what you're going through, is a huge positive. That might be the one thing that enables you to have a positive life outcome. So even though sometimes organisations that give funding, or that, have a short amount of funding for a small time to do one thing, you kind of underestimate how important that is, because it's not like, I've got 2 children myself now and I take them here and there and this club and that club. But they will hopefully always come back to me to give that consistency. And these young people don't have that. So having something that's really positive, like the Care Council or the Youth Commission, whatever it is, there's a consistent feeling of self-worth, and knowing that actually, I'm sure some of the things that young people have contacted Motivate about have been nothing to do with what they're working on, but it's a point of support. And it might be something that Kirsty or Motivate can't do, but they can help in signposting to someone else. And just knowing I've actually got someone that's looking out for me, because that doesn't exist. Because like Kirsty said, the PAs, because of this extremely high workload and, a caseload, often young people are seen as cases and a case record and a number, because they don't have the time to build up those positive relationships, where something like the Care Council or Youth Commission do. You see them regularly, you get to know them. So having that relationship, that relational relationship, let's go with that. But having that connection with somebody can really help them make the right decision, or make a decision that's going to benefit them, because they've got other role models saying, yeah, that's the right thing to do, or let me talk to that person for you. Because without that, people don't have, there isn't that consistent person. It's lacking.
I agree. And actually, I think when we Motivate took on a piece of work last year in relation to writing our new strategy, and care leavers would have been part of that. Actually, what came out really loud and clear is those community bases, those really safe spaces in their communities that they can just walk into, and they know the people that they've got positive relationships are going to be there. And actually, that's for them, that's where they can always go to. So it is having that safe space and that safe face is really, really important.
And I've seen that in action. I've seen it in action at Motivate, at places like the Parenting Network, where a place becomes just that haven, and if you're having a really dreadful time, you can knock on that door.
You just go.
And how important is that? How important is that?
I think, sorry.
No, go on.
I also think young people that have, so if I think about young people that have accessed the Care Council since the beginning, since 2023, and actually one of those would have come along to the workshop, that young person's self-confidence and self-worth is through the roof. So remembering that young person in 2023, she wouldn't have gone and done public speaking and spoken in front of a huge conference. I think being part of the council has really instilled, actually, I can do this. I am worth this. I can now make change, and I can go out and do it. And actually, that young person and some other from the Care Council have just gone to London, and they've won a national Youth Voice Award for their work in relation to reducing stigma. So they got second place. But actually, they had a whole day out in London at this big awards event. It was amazing.
Yeah, fabulous.
Really, really great for them.
Yeah, fabulous.
And I think on that note, you as well, young people that go through care or as a care leaver, you're not celebrated. You feel bad. You come from a family, people have made mistakes. You are seen as a victim. You're not given a voice around the table.
Seen as victim and sometimes seen as a problem.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you don't have a say over your life up until that age at all. Every decision is made about you for you, but actually it's maybe not what you want, but there's limited choices. So getting to then an age where you can engage in something positive gives you back some power to be celebrated and to be seen. And it's similar as it is in Motivate, but with the Youth Commission, young people are now being part of discussions that are going to affect them. And it is really daunting. It's daunting for anyone to sit around a table where people are making decisions and go, excuse me, but can I just say...
Especially when they're grown-ups and they're professionals and they have these job titles that mean nothing to you. And yeah, exactly.
But now, young people are being invited into a space where they can actually be heard and listened to, and it's so important. Having said that, though, we're not reaching enough, because there's a group of young people that for whatever reason have seen an opportunity and thought, oh, maybe whatever that is in them, but
and the moment being right.
The moment being right. And there's not enough moments being created. I mean, if you think about the numbers of care leavers within Hampshire.
Nearly 3,000 in Hampshire.
I mean, how many are on the care council, or how many are involved? And it's because, again, a lot of young people think, I don't want that. I've had a terrible experience in care. You can all go and, and it's about making sure that they're aware of the opportunities that are there and the support that exists. However, again, there wouldn't be enough support that anyone could give to 3,000 young people. There needs to be more. There needs to be more interventions, more community hubs, more trusted adults, because unfortunately the outcomes for care leavers life outcomes are really poor. And if we look at the prison system, I think over a quarter of people that are in prison are or have experienced care. And it's disproportionate. I mean, it's really worrying. And that's not the fault of that individual. I don't believe anyone is born into my life path is going to end up with me in prison. It's because things have happened to them out of their control. But again, the stigma, we still look at that and think, oh, they're offenders, or they're getting themselves involved in criminality. So it's a huge jigsaw, lots of different things to put together.
And actually, if you're in a situation where there's people around you who would pull you into that cycle, if you don't have people around you pulling in the other direction, it's really easy to fall into that. And I would be a little bit critical of kind of the British attitude towards young people who are getting involved in criminality. I heard somebody the other day, I think it might have been on Amal Rajan's podcast, where the guest was talking about, in I think it was Norway, if a young person has been involved in drug trafficking, let's say a 14-year-old's been involved in drug trafficking, the headlines would be, 14-year-old rescued from drug trafficking. Whereas here, the headline would be, chuck away the key. And that, when you think about kids who have come from these, I don't know if it's a word, vulnerabilizing backgrounds, where, just by virtue of what's been happening in their childhoods, they are steps back. And they don't have that support network around them to keep them out of that situation. Are we surprised when it happens, and that the kind of discourse about it is that they're naughty, they're bad. Whereas actually, how do you keep out of that situation when you're being dragged in that direction and nobody's there to pull you back?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest risks of being a care leaver is you don't have the bank of anyone. And I know lots of young people don't have the bank of mum and dad. I'm not saying that you don't if you're a care leaver, but you do if you're not, because, a lot of people don't have funds to support, but you don't have anybody. So it's very easy to make a choice make a criminal choice where you're breaking the law, because
especially if you've got a sense of belonging with the group that are breaking the law,
and your sense of the implications of it might be quite limited because there's nobody in your ear saying that's going to follow you around for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a small thing.
No. So it's we're stigmatizing a person without really understanding or being able to give any other choices. It's easy to point the blame at somebody if you think you had choice A, B, C, D, E, F and G, yet you still chose that path. For a care leaver, they might have choice A and maybe a tiny bit of a choice B.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've got to eat and you've got to be warm and you've got to feel love. So unfortunately, other adults will be targeting people that are in the care system. And you do see people hanging around outside children's homes because they're like, you don't have anyone looking out for you, so I'm gonna swoop in here.
I can fill that gap.
So the risk is really, really big of any kind of negative life choice that someone would make. And it's sometimes not a choice, it's a necessity to make
just
a decision.
To get by.
So that's why, again, more support is definitely needed. And that leaving care is extremely difficult because you're going from being looked after as a child to being sent on your merry way as an adult. So that that kind of medium time of the support is where it's really, really needed.
Even starting that support earlier.
It should be.
Yeah, we have funding for small grants for individual care leavers. And, it's the kinds of things where, I don't know, as a parent, you often reflect on what's happening with other children and you kind of try and compare it to how you're doing with your own kids, because we're all a little bit insecure about our parenting, right? I hope it's not just me.
Everyone is.
Yeah. But, I look at some of the stuff that these young people who are quite close in age to my own children now are applying for. And it is, it's a laptop. Well, I just bought laptops the other day for my kids. And we did it on a 0% credit card because we knew that you could do that. So easy peasy. Carpet, And I think for a lot of those things, and it might not be so much bank of mum and dad, but it's more that most people, you'd find a way, even if you don't have money, you'd find a way to make sure your kid had carpet in their flat or a table to eat from. And it might be dragging something out of the shed and taking the cobwebs off it. Might not be going to IKEA. And it's that doesn't exist. It's just not there,
No, you don't. I've had towels on my floor when I first moved into my supported lodgings, which was disgusting. It was horrible. And I was like, wow, this carpet's so gross. I'll just put some like towels or a blanket on the floor as a rug. And you have a telly. I had a telly that you had to keep hitting in order for it to work. And it was black and white. You're resourceful, but again, you don't have anyone that can help out with that situation. So you would, the week I needed a new coat because my one was falling apart, I didn't really eat that week. I made up for it later in life, but it is, that's the thing. You just have to make some really difficult decisions in order to just get the bare minimum for things. And that's the trouble. And I remember having looked back through my care records more recently. I remember when I decided I wanted to go to university, and I think at the time I was like one of the only ones in Surrey County Council at the time to go, but I had to write begging letters, and it was really upsetting actually, because I was like, I had to beg for them to pay for a train ticket so I could go and look around a uni, or I had to beg for them to buy my books that I needed for my first year in uni. And then I had someone write back, say something like, is it really £4 on a set of biros? And I was like, how can anyone say that? But so to get the minimum things you need that you want to support you to succeed in life by going to uni, you've got to beg someone. And then you just think, oh, maybe I just won't bother because I don't
deserve it.
Yeah, I don't want to beg anyone. So that it's just really, really difficult. And you feel really bad. You're like, I shouldn't want to beg, but I don't have anyone else to ask for that help. And that, unfortunately, this was 25 years ago. And it hasn't changed that much. People like yourselves that are giving these small grants, that's brilliant because they definitely didn't exist back then. So it's really great that they exist. But again, it's still not enough. It's
tiny drops in the ocean.
And also, I'd hate for my own child, to beg me to buy their books.
For their biros.
Awkward for biros.
That was not a question. You get given your biros because you're studying. The fact you have to ask somebody and keep your receipt and send off to prove that
you actually spent the money on that.
Yeah, it's like, well, you won't believe me because I'm a care leaver. So, and actually sometimes you would get a £30 voucher. You'd be like, I'm going to buy a new top from New Look for a £5 because I can't do it in any other way. But then you have to lie that you've lost some money because, well, I shouldn't be buying myself a new top, but no one else is going to buy me a new top. So you're always, I guess, feeling bad that you've done something wrong, and you've not done anything wrong. If anything, you have been wronged, which is why you're in that situation. But it's a horrible thing to carry around with you.
And I think that there is a proper statistic on that. Not that I can remember it, but a proper statistic on that, isn't it? That when things go wrong for children, they believe that it was because of them.
Yeah.
That the wrongness in their lives, it's a natural human thing that
and
they
it's human
believe
for
it's
all
their
of us
fault.
to feel that, isn't it?
There's a saying we say within Motivate, only work on what's strong, not what is wrong.
Oh, that's
like
lovely.
that.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really important as well. Because sometimes you can't work on what's wrong either, because sometimes there's always going to be things that are wrong that you can't fix. But it isn't. I think that's what I have tried to do in my life, and what I try and instill in the young people I have supported and do support, is that there are some things we just can't change, and that is part of life, but we have to focus on the good things, the positive things, the things that make you unique, the things that are going to drive you forward. And again, you need people around a care leaver or any vulnerable young person to see the things in themselves, because often there's such a cloud over you that you struggle to see any positives. And again, you don't have the people around you in the morning when you're getting up and you hate yourself going, come on, you'll be all right, you're going to have a good day, you're amazing. That's not there anymore. And unfortunately nowadays with people on phones, they're
likely to getting a lot of the other messages. So
it's really difficult for someone to have self-worth when there is a wall that they are up against every single day. And it does go one way into adulthood as well.
Yeah.
As bringing back to what you said at the beginning, we do carry that childhood with us, but we have to give young people opportunities, all young people, but especially children that are disadvantaged in many ways, such as somebody who's within care.
Picking up on that, actually, that disadvantage in many ways, because I think it's, maybe having listened for the last little while, people will start to understand about some of the challenges that are by virtue of being in the care system. But actually, I think one of the things that's interesting and difficult overlaying that is additional needs, social, emotional, mental health and learning needs and so on, which is increasingly the case across our population of children, right? So that's an added layer to it. And then the mental health issues for young people and we know CAMS and so on, child and adolescent mental health services are really overloaded. And we know that for care leavers, there's very poor outcomes when it comes to self-harm and suicide. What's the thing that charities can do to help kind of ameliorate some of the stuff that's happening there?
So I think where charities and the voluntary sector have been really, really good is being able to support young people quicker with those needs. And I think especially around emotional health and well-being, and really working with a young person and giving them the time to work out themselves how they can keep themselves more fit and well whilst they are on waiting lists. So I think the voluntary sector have been able to pick up that really quickly. I think within Motivate, for our youth mentoring service, the majority of our referrals come through, and our referrers are CAMS mental health service and social services. So very, very quickly, we're able to go in and support those young people rather than them sitting on waiting lists, waiting for that support. And that's the voluntary sector picking up that statutory work.
Being incredibly responsive. And I'm going to ask you the question, and like any good interviewer, I think I know the answer, Kirsty. With those referrals, is there any money coming along to support those people, young people?
Funnily enough, Jacqui, no.
Oh, gosh, Kirsty, I'm so surprised to hear that.
So we do get funding for our youth mentoring service from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner still. But that's very targeted around support for young people involved in antisocial behaviour, crime, at risk of exploitation. For those mental health referrals, that doesn't come with money, but we have our own funding in-house that we have got
That
from
you've worked
trusts
for.
and grants and
Yeah.
our corporate partners to be able to support those young people quite quickly. And the same with the referrals from social children's care, social services, that they wouldn't pay for that support. We have that funding in-house.
You have to scrabble around from
we
elsewhere.
do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a really big gap that the voluntary sector is filling.
It's a
And I think
huge gap.
realistically, we know that that's not going to change. You know, we know how difficult budgets are in that sector.
I think for the next at least 3 years, we're in a really challenging position, especially in relation to local authority grants. And, you know, the voluntary sector are picking up where they can, but I know lots of other charities are already really, really struggling.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to note. And actually, we know care leavers need more support. And there's no money in local authority whatsoever.
It's a really scary time, I think. It's kind of like a time of perma-crisis, isn't it? You look back to before COVID, and actually things were pretty horrific at that time for the voluntary sector. Then you had this crazy situation of COVID. And actually, I'm always quite proud of the funding sector because they responded really generously. But actually, that didn't go into all of the corners of the sector. And it means that there are some funders who have less money available now. And then we're going through this, you know, genuine global perma-crisis now where everything feels so uncertain that actually it's meaning there's less money available. We've seen some charities fold recently, some community groups fold. I don't think I've spoken to anybody who isn't worrying about their reserves, you know, and reserves are there for the rainy day. And it's like, yeah, but we've had sort of 5 years of rainy day.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really scary time.
It's really scary. And I think conversations already with my board of trustees are, you know, how much can we spend out of the reserves this year, next year, for our rainy day. It always feels like a rainy day, but I think this is really, really tough period that we're coming into. I've just celebrated, I think, my 16th year of Motivate, and actually in relation to need for young people and the amount of referrals coming into the organisation versus our funding, it's really challenging, really challenging. I think for last quarter, so the last 3 months, we had 100 referrals into the organisation for young people requiring youth mentoring.
Yeah.
We don't have the funding to take on 100 young people for youth mentoring.
It's a lot of kids, isn't it?
So, I mean, we've set up so we can feed them into other programmes, our youth health and wellbeing, or our youth skills, youth futures. And so we try our best, but we're not going to be able to meet need.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? It is really scary.
And that, you know, affects our care leavers as well.
Yeah. And I like bringing back to what you said, Jacqui, the need, because we're obviously talking about care leavers, but there's lots of kind of smaller groups of young people for different reasons. But it's almost like you say, local authorities don't put them ahead of the waiting lists in certain situations, and they should, because there's no other support around them. If you think about doctors' appointments or any kind of help with anything with loans or finance, or they still have to wait and work everything else out themselves without that support. You kind of need the professionals to step up at that point. Housing, oh my gosh, housing.
Oh, so difficult.
I mean,
and benefits.
I wouldn't have had a clue about any of that. And I remember being on benefits and I got £38 a week or something while I was at college. And then I started like a little part-time job. They're like, oh no, you won't be able to get your benefits then. I'm like, literally don't have any money, and I'm selling double glazing every evening and on a phone. And I'm now not allowed to keep that money because I'll get my benefit taken off me. And I was like, but I'm at college and I'm studying and I still can't try and do a part-time job and get the same money.
And there literally is nothing.
And
there's no other safety.
I've got
net.
a blanket on my carpet, for goodness sake, to hide somebody else's stain. So, but it hasn't changed now either. And I think that there's just not that help. And I know that the personal kind of assistance will be there to help, but we know that that's not a consistent offer. So I think businesses, organisations, or authorities should be stepping up to put young people first when it comes to care leavers, but unfortunately that isn't there.
And it's this sort of I think of it kind of as a matrix of need, you know, because over one side across the entire country, we've got lots of older people who are really struggling. We know we have a dementia crisis, lots of young adults and young people with additional needs. We've, unemployment's just been, shown to have gone up slightly. And then you have these, young people with complex needs and young people with complex needs who are also care leavers. So it is really difficult to work out where should that support go. So my big question for you both then is, what's the systemic change that needs to happen? What can we do prevention-wise so that the need isn't so great, that the complexity is less? Are there earlier interventions we should be doing? Is it about the statutory services and how that's able to respond?
It's a big question.
That's a big question, isn't it?
I think I'll
We're on a
start
timeline
the
now too.
conversation by saying there needs to be much earlier support around sense of belonging, sense of self, and the practical skills that are needed for life. And that, like I think Kirsty mentioned it briefly, like that needs to start earlier. That transition into independence should be starting way earlier. So that's one strand, I would say.
So more support being provided from a younger age.
About
what independent life looks like.
What it looks like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What you need to know.
You can do for yourself as an adult to help yourself in that situation, which is accessing the support that is there somewhere. So that's one thing. I think a much earlier intervention rather than 6 months or a year beforehand. It's preparing for that stage a lot earlier. So that's one thing I think that would need to happen. And that also comes from people like schools. So the whole multi-agency approach around that, it shouldn't just be down to one service and organisation. It should be everyone working to build that young person up to be in a better position to experience what stuff is going to be thrown at you once you turn 18.
It's really interesting because we're going back to team around the child meetings, team around the family meetings, earlier intervention, prevention. It was all there. And I think that's the really frustrating bit. It's really missing at the minute, organisations coming together and really working for that family and for that child much earlier, so that we don't have so many young people, so many care leavers, so many neat young people at absolute crisis point. So many young people, really struggling with their mental health. We need to go back to earlier prevention, earlier intervention.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Because actually, if you don't, the consequences are more expensive.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
it is though, isn't it?
And more dire.
Absolutely,
look at the prison system. There's no pretense that that's going well at the moment.
No.
And actually, all of that lack of intervention, that's how people end up in prison, isn't it?
Well, it is. So we're talking about, I guess, the systematic change that is needed for care leavers, but actually it should be happening before that family unit experiences such adversity in whatever way. So we're going back to the basics, and then we're going back to young parents, but then we're going back to their parents. So it's a huge culture change that needs to change. We have to start somewhere, don't we? And I do believe that hopefully there's a new youth strategy that's coming out from the Home Office soon, and I believe that they're hopefully going to be focusing on more kind of hubs that are going to be offering more preventative kind of support, but it needs to be more, and some of these things aren't that expensive because ultimately it's that cost saving benefit, isn't it, from the cost that it would be to the government way down the line. But it's about getting the right people in the right roles as well to offer that support.
I think when you look at just the amount of services for families that have disappeared over a period of 10 years, where do they go? Where do they go when things that they're starting to struggle at home? They've got things going on themselves. They need support with their children. Where is there? Where is there? And actually, is it 5-6 years down the line, those children are going into care and then they're becoming care leavers? Actually, we need to
Yeah.
start right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like one of I've got a very good friend, not in this county, but she's a Senko, but she's outside the school every morning speaking to the parents of the children that are experiencing, difficulties, and they're having kind of challenges as a family. But she's like, but I'm just one person, and there's such a need. And I think every school that you'd speak to, and these are only the children that are in school, there's a lot of young people that aren't able to access kind of mainstream education. And I was at a PSH or RSHE Leeds event last week.
RSHE?
Yeah, so the PSHE, relationships and sex education in schools, and there's a new policy and guidance that's come out, and schools now have to teach a hell of a lot more about lots of things that are important, but a lot of schools don't have teachers to teach that. So what I'm kind of saying is,
and the children are already embarrassed before the conversation starts.
Yeah. So, but there needs to be skilled people in those roles. There needs to be more people within that kind of support within schools and outside of schools too. But and in doctors' surgeries, you should be able to go there to speak to someone that can support you in other ways that isn't just a GP for a medical. But like Kirsty says, they aren't there anymore. So if you don't have that person in a school that can help you at that initial stage,
where do you find it?
And then all the while, you've got issues that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they reach a crisis point, and then suddenly, children's services may have to come in to protect the children. But it is huge, and sometimes it's overwhelmingly worrying, and I guess you just have to focus on the little bits that are trying to help. Because there was a whole review done on children's services and the care system a few years ago, and a huge document of recommendations, and it was recommended that there needs to be a whole reform of children's services, which there does, but it would cost
so much
money that it won't happen. So all the while, people like, the voluntary sector, Motivate are picking up all those pieces. And it's an impossible thing to do, but we have to keep going, don't we? Because there will be young people that are responding and that are helping, being able to kind of get that support and hopefully change. And the more young people that do have a positive outcome, the more they will shout about it, and it will encourage other young people to do the same for themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's it as well, isn't it? Around that change is actually there needs to be a massive promotion about our care leavers and how amazing they are, and how much they can thrive in the right settings, and how much they want to support others that are going through that journey. I think that would be really, really important, and something that we can do.
Yeah.
And that's actually from the young people that I support or have supported. They want their voices to be heard for the right reasons too. I mean, some young people are doing such amazing, incredible things to make things better for other young people, such as in the Care Council. Yet we don't talk about it enough because people aren't interested in good stories. It's just the media, I guess, in general, isn't it? So we then have to maybe force that upon people to celebrate those wins, because then someone else might be like, oh, I'm a care leaver, like maybe I could do that, or maybe I could get involved.
Yeah, and that is what is happening. I think we've had more care leavers interested in the council because they've seen what the council have done, and actually that feedback that's going into Hampshire to hopefully make change. That's what they want.
And that's the thing. But before Motivate kind of were able to provide that service, that wasn't happening. So it's amazing that it's already growing so much. And similar for myself, when I started in my role as youth engagement manager, there were a few young people from different communities, but we were lacking that voice of the care leavers. And because that's my background, I was like, come on, we need to get young people, kind of give them the opportunity. And now they're some of our loudest champions. And I'm fantastic. Like, you go for it. Come on, let's get you in front of the people that... And you find actually that organisations and authorities, local authorities, do want to hear. You do get people that want to help, but it doesn't, the purse strings are still tightened.
It's about what you can then do with that information, isn't it?
So you've got to shout louder. You've just got to keep shouting.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to affect change in a massive machine, aren't we? And I think I recognise and how difficult that is, and we have to do a lot of work with our care leavers on how difficult that can be with no money available and kind of all that red tape. But they are shouting louder.
Yeah.
We're going to have to draw to a bit of a close, I think. But before we do, I've got one last question I want each of you to answer, which is just to have a think about a young person you've worked with where you feel really proud, A, of what you've done, but also of what they've become.
We're both thinking.
Are we going to think about
Probably
the
gonna
same
think
young
about the same
person?
No naming names.
Okay.
Yeah. Go on,
So
you go
then
first.
Liz has to think about someone else if
I
it's
will.
suddenly
Oh,
revealed
okay,
as the
go
same
on.
person. Kirsty.
So I am thinking of a care leaver that's been involved in the council since 2023. Is the most amazing individual. Her confidence and self-worth has really, really grown. Has started writing her own book.
Oh, wow.
So we have linked this young person up with a published author who is supporting her to write her book.
Oh, fabulous.
which is really, really special. That young person has just won the national award for her work around reducing stigma. And I think she's got a very bright future ahead of her. We as an organisation are very, very proud of her.
She sounds wonderful. Let us know when the book is published.
Will do.
Amazing. And there is a young man that I have supported for some time who has grabbed every single opportunity to have a great future for himself and is so open and champions the care leaver and the experience and is willing to just share really courageously parts of himself in order for people to, I think, bringing lived experience, it humanizes what a care leaver is. And he is someone to stand up and say, this is me, this is my experience, and this is what you can do to help. And it's great, again, doing what the kind of situations that Kirsty and I and other people that support care leavers do, is finding the opportunity for that to grow and to sit back and just be really proud that they're not allowing some really negative things that have happened in their life to define them, but they are using it as a superpower and they will speak about it as their superpower. And I'm like, yeah, come on, you've got all these amazing skills and you're using it now because he's had the belief instilled in him from people and professionals that believe in him, because it's not come from some personal relationships. So I feel proud that I've kind of used my experience and my understanding of what they're going through to kind of say, here you go, lift them up. You go and do it now, you know. So, but it's incredibly rewarding to work with any young person who has had a challenging start, and you're there to give them a bit of a push forward. You go and do this. You can, and we believe in you. And that's really good to be in that position.
I think superpower is the key here. There you have superpower.
Yeah. Well, I was expecting to feel a bit glum during today's podcast. And then certainly there's been some moments where, you know, some of the stuff that's going on is pretty tough. You know, I think you don't need to use your imagination too much to kind of understand what a child might have faced before they are, you know, removed from that situation and into the care system. But I do feel really hopeful that we're never going to be able to fix the entire system, right? Not the three of us in this room, much that we have our own superpowers. But, you know, I think it's really heartening to know we've found it really good to see how much support we've been able to drum up in terms of the funding that we're able to bring into the county and then get out, you know, to motivate others. But I think I've found it really uplifting to hear your stories about, you know, the young people that you've been supporting and just how brave they've been in the face of absolutely no doubt about it, real adversity. So thank you both so much for coming. Kirsty Robertson, Motivate. Thank you very much. Liz Hubbuck, OPCC, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks to both of you. Let's just keep having these conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Episode 2
coming your way.